This is not some epiphany revelation, but in case you forgot, suffering sucks. Coach Tom Miller, and I have been on my own suffering journey for the last couple months. And I say suffering journey because I've decided to deal with the suffering differently than I have in the past. I have suffering to endure, not just over my wife telling me I'm done in May and then sticking to it, acting like it, proving it until there was no choice but to separate, and right away her saying we need to get a divorce because I don't see this ever working. And this was, by the way, the most important relationship in my life that I've ever had. And still to this day, the most valuable. And I did not see it coming, and it hit me by surprise. And in the past, if a relationship breaks up, fine, I will go just get loaded, feel better. Or I will just go find another woman and prove you and show you what's up. Or I will really focus on proving that you made a huge mistake and you were wrong and you will regret this decision. And honestly, the second one is something that I have been focused on. And that made me want to work faster, work more, work better, so I could get us out of this financial strain that, well, I should back up. It wasn't a complete surprise when she said I'm done. She and I have had issues, well, since we first got together and we first got married. And we have done a lot of things to focus on those issues, but some things weren't fixed. But things got really bad in 2020 when I decided it was a good idea. By the way, I got sober with my wife, and she was instrumental, very helpful, very supportive, very loving. And in 2020, I decided it was a good idea to try the Voldemort of all drugs, making sure this recording. And that Voldemort of all drugs starts with an M and ends with the abbreviation in H. It's very closely related to Adderall. And I didn't tell her about it. In fact, when she asked me, I lied to her about it. And prior to this, I realized that my in-gym business was failing. And it wasn't failing because of COVID. It was failing because I had lost the respect and loyalty and the congruence of my team and my clients. And that's a whole other series of mistakes, which I'll go into in a different video. But it wasn't COVID. The problem was Tom Miller. However, clouded that over. And I should also say that in 2019, when everything was going great, I gave myself permission to use an anxiety reducer, a sleep aid, because those THC/CBD gummies. The gummies turned into a liquid, and that liquid was no longer just used at night. And as time went on, especially when I wasn't around my wife, I used vaping. She knew I was using CBD and THC, which turned out to just be marijuana. I'll just be honest. She knew I was, but she was not comfortable with it, and I tried to hide how much I was using it. So we have that going. Then we have me relapsing with the Voldemort of all drugs in 2020, and I'm justifying it. I'm closing down the gym. We moved to Southern California, so I'm trying to run the gym from afar, flying back and forth. And her and I are just getting less and less connected. So in May 2022, by the way, when the truth and the shit finally hit the fan, because I had been lying to her about my use of the Voldemort drug, and when it finally came out, we decided we were going to go for it. We were going to join forces. I was going to get off of it. I was going to get off the Adderall, and I was even going to get off the THC. I never did get off the THC. I kept using it as a crutch, and I won't lie, it was painful getting off the Voldemort drug and I'm not saying it out loud because I'm worried that they won't play it, but it starts with an M and the abbreviation ends with an H, and it's closely related to Adderall, which I had a prescription for, the Adderall. But I munched them up like power pellets and ran out of them before the prescription was ready to be refilled, and I had to find a substitute. Well, I thought I had to because I didn't want to deal with the discomfort of running out or not having it. It's like this aversion to feeling uncomfortable or going through the pain and suffering of reality that has justified so many decisions. In any case, though we decided to stick it out, I did stop using it completely in December of 2020. I didn't stop using THC. In fact, it wasn't until, it was a crutch. It was like a numbing, don't have to deal with my feelings type of, that's what it was. It was a crutch. And I use that crutch every day, multiple times. So I'm trying to build the business back up. And in the process, I started a different business with a friend before the meth use, and I just am a mess. I don't do a good job. In fact, that's when the meth use started. The suffering happened and really started feeling it on May 15th when I decided I'm stopping the THC cold turkey. And that was shortly after my wife had said, I'm done. Now, my intention was to prove to her, you don't want to be done. This still can work. We don't want to throw all these years away and our hopes and goals together. But she was done, and she still is. And in fact, within a month, she said, it's not just separation, we should just divorce. I mean, she knew what she was doing. There was no doubt in her mind. She did not look back. She did not even flinch. I am scrambling, trying to prove to her that this is not what we should do. And finally, she is just not budging. I say, well, I should move out. We should separate and part ways, because this won't be good for the boys and won't be good for us. But I didn't think permanently. I have lived in this apartment by myself for 1 month officially now, and it's been a month filled with suffering. But I haven't dealt with the suffering the same way. There are moments where I blame her for it, especially at the beginning, and there's moments where I resent her for it. Those moments still come. They do. But I've realized that the way I've dealt with suffering in the past will not work. Since relapsing, instead of just studying weight loss and fitness like I always have, and sales like I always have, I have studied neuroscience, quantum mechanics, cognitive behavior therapy, NLP. I have studied why we repeat the same mistakes again and again. And through those studies, I realized that when suffering happens, our best solution is to go into it instead of trying to run away from it or distract ourselves from it. And this is new to me, and it's exceptionally hard. I will say that I'm not crying right now and talking about this because I've been practicing it for at least the last 3-4 weeks. I go back and forth from self-pity, sorrow, blame, resentment, to realizing that this suffering is all there is right now. This is what my present moment entails. Even thinking about hopeful dreams of the future doesn't help, because hope is just another way to get out of the suffering. So is regret. Can't change the past, but I learned a shit ton from the past. So I'm doing it completely sober. There's no of the Voldemort drug, no alcohol, no THC. There's no other women. There's no other relationships. And I live in a city 100 miles away from her that I lived in 20 years ago when I first started my drug use and suffering. That's a story for a different video. The point of this video is what I have learned about suffering is that it happens to every single person on the planet. It is inevitable. It's part of the human experience. But when we postpone or delay the suffering, either through drug use, through activity and action, through achievement or success, through relationships with other people, through complaining and blaming, it just pushes it down, and it's going to come out later. What I am trying to do, what I've learned to do, and I know how to do cognitively, but have not made it my unconscious practice yet, is go into the suffering, feel the suffering, and see what I learn about myself, about other people, and what I learn and what I can apply and what opportunities open up that would not have opened up if I continue to use my old coping techniques for suffering. I've learned a lot about why we repeat those negative behaviors. I've learned a lot about addiction. I've learned a lot about how the brain gets wired in the unconscious mind. But now I'm learning how to actually deal with suffering in the present moment. And I share this video because some good has to come out of this. If I think about the plans we had together and we won't do now, and I think about how hard I tried to get back together and keep it together, and she pushed me away. And I think about how worthless and useless and unvaluable I felt that she was so quickly able to say no. And then all the other past mistakes I'd made. I'll tell you, when I stopped using the THC, I had that numbing agent was gone. All the pain from all the suffering just came at once. And I am not saying this so, you feel bad for me and send me some sympathy. I am saying this because my best choice is to go into this suffering, to feel it, and to realize that it is a teacher. And it is a teacher that if I go into it and learn from it, will change my life forever. I'm certain that I will not be the same person I was before, ever again. I am certain that I cannot use achievement and making $10,000 in sales each week. It won't save me. And I'm also certain that what I did before won't work, and it didn't work then. So if you are suffering, maybe it's not a relationship breaking up, maybe it's not a drug relapse, maybe it's not a business failing, maybe it's not letting down a partner and a friend, maybe it's not loneliness, living by yourself, trying to figure everything out. Maybe it's something different. Or maybe it is one of those things. I encourage you, watch my next video, because I am learning how to deal with suffering differently. And if I can help at least one person suffer a bit less, or at least learn from that suffering so it doesn't last as long, my suffering will be for a good reason instead of just more pain. Coach Tom Miller, grateful you watched this video and trying my best to get from this feeling of pain and loss to a feeling of gratitude all the time.